Hi, everybody. Just we'll just wait a couple of seconds or a few minutes. People are coming in as I speak. Hope everyone is doing well. And in Canada, I think this is Thanksgiving weekend coming up. Monday is actually Thanksgiving. So I wish all Canadians a happy Thanksgiving. And I think a little later it'll be American Thanksgiving, which will be great. I think it's in November, isn't it, Marlene? Good. So I have a couple of questions left. We're in need of more. If you don't mind thinking up a few and sending them in, some that might be interesting to you. This is a question by Toshi Takuchi. Sorry, Toshi. He says, "Hi, Ron. Alice Bailey was writing about the etheric body, and of course, I'm more familiar with your description of the physical, emotional, and mental states, as you often describe them. How does the etheric relate to your descriptions?" Wow, interesting question. You know, we are in our species very much involved with thinking in terms of different levels. And I think etheric was one of those descriptions of something that was fairly close to the body. We might call it kind of a magnetic or energetic energy close to the physical, related to the physical. Some even talk about it as heat emanating off the body, various things like that. It was called etheric because really basically at that time there wasn't anything that could be, let's say, used that would describe a level of consciousness that or energy that was close to the body but not necessarily in the body or of the body. Well, it turns out it's in the body, of the body, but it's off the scale of what we can see and often what we can feel. Very interesting that we are so liberal with our ways of speaking and our ways of describing. We love words and we love to try and make sense of things with those words. I was reading a book the other day on infrared emissions, which of course are off the visual scale that we have, the spectrum. Our spectrum is quite small. In other words, the way we see colors. And basically, it is thought that energy fields around the body, if you have that sort of inner sight, you can see these fields literally at a certain level that relates to energy or rays or emissions from an individual that make up the individual. This is quite, let's say, discussed at large by many. Once again, people consider certain colors to have certain kinds of, let's say, characteristics. And etheric is just one of those levels, theoretically, supposedly close to the body. My view on this is that there's an intermixing of all energies that relate to an individual. Our personality happens to be a fairly useful system on these traditional levels. And those systems can be perceived energetically by others and by yourself with a little bit of willingness to cultivate a kind of sensing system that would include these chakras. Alice Bailey talks about these chakras being in the etheric system, as many others have. And in other words, close to the form that we cultivate as a system that we use for engaging with people. I happen to consider that there are an intermixing of levels within these chakras. And the chakras are basically kind of universal and have many, many levels, meaning that energy can flow through them into us and help us to move into different levels. It makes no sense traditionally, let's say personality traditionally, in a secular way, because we don't see them unless we see through a kind of clairvoyance that relates everything to a personality. And I think that there's more within us, because I think the personality form is a field. It's a complex field that we use on these levels, but can be stretched to perceive on different levels. So it doesn't help very much, but if you look at the idea that energy emits from everything, period, from stones, from everything. If you could see in the infrared levels, as some scientists have talked about, especially in radio astronomy, what you will find is everything emanates something. And that something might be called the etheric level, or emanations from a particular form. All life forms do it, including trees and animals. We do it. We emanate. If you're close to a person, your experience can be, you can feel the heat from them, for example. That you wouldn't call etheric level because you already have words for that, heat. However, the etheric level can be called anything. I would suggest that when you're thinking of this, Toshi, you read and take a look at all of these things. Many people will talk about these sort of traditional ways of speaking when you're speaking about so-called spiritual stuff. And you could even say at the lowest level of emotion, there is an etheric element. At levels of emotion, there is a mental element. At levels of emotion, there is a physical element. If you can think for a minute and make sense of that, then there is something that you can perceive physically, and beyond it, engaging with levels within those chakras, for example, that have as well different levels of engagement with um, levels that we don't even have a clue about, but we've let's say defined some of them, and by defining them, we make them real for us, and by redefining them or attempting to understand them slightly different, then we begin to understand things differently. If we only hold to the idea of there's an etheric level, physical level, etheric level, emotional level, mental level, personality level, soul level, and go on in the tradition of theosophy, which is Alice Bailey's orientation, um, then we have strata. From my point of view, this strata system is interactive on all levels, can be. Our level of perception relates to a kind of strata defining. We can perceive emotion, we can engage with our minds to some degree, we can engage with our bodies to some degree. And we can even perceive levels of spirit on our emotional level, on our physical levels, let's say. Could be caused on the etheric level because it affects, if there is such a thing, it affects our physical level. Any engagement with these chakras affects every level because there is a mixture of levels. It's a bit like saying, or hard to say, our engagement with breathing oxygen is really interesting. And we drink water. It's a mixture. It's a compound. H2O level is mixed with something else, so we can handle it. And because we don't breathe pure oxygen in our atmosphere, there's coming together. They blend together. Same as our inner knowing, our inner growth is not just a thing called fix your personality and now you're spiritual. And the personality has just spoken about fixing itself. And now it's the boss of the fixing. It has nothing to do with anything except that it's a tool that can be used for the purpose of engaging with life to help you perceive you, understand you a little bit better, thereby understanding others because they are engaged in the same kind of rubric, same way of engaging with life as we are to some degree. Thereby, we begin to understand others deeper and understand the dilemma of a personality. But we're still affected by levels of, my personality is better than so-and-so's, and so-and-so's should be like this. And we have no idea how that other person has lived and gone through the developmental stages of their own existence and where they are in relationship to being able to handle that particular method of engaging with life. It's a compound, it's a complexity. When you look at those chakras, they're not stayed in a particular way in the traditional sense of locked in, and this is the way they are, and this is the way they have to be. There's tremendous ebb and flow, deeper levels of understanding that are, let's say, mm, different than our personalities need to have an understanding this way and that way and that way, and therefore that means this. And I believe that because so and so said that in 1821, and in 1463, this was noted, and in 1928, this was noted. It's an ongoing discovery. Spiritual growth hasn't really got points that relate directly only to what we come up with. It's into that level of growing is into unexplored territory by the individual who attempts to become involved with it. And the good thing about everything that's being written is that it may give you a clue as to the possibility that someone over there may have this certain experience, but you have not. Your experience may be different. And that, in a kind of way, is a diversion from a construct that says this is the only way that this can be, and that's the only way that that can be. And our logical systems are based on that particular kind of principle. If you are at all interested in science, at all, in any way, in the history of science or the history of life itself, you come face to face with the realization that many things were discovered and thrown away. And they were, let's say, different than that particular traditional way of seeing things at the time. And then rediscovered 10, 15, 100 years later, and utilized in somewhat similar manner and found to be a more, let's say, more consequential in the understanding of something. We have a very fine and valuable idea within us somehow that we learn from others and find out something different. And we do. But we also revere certain ways of seeing things, and they are not our experience. So process is a really important thing in spiritual growth. It's probably one of the most important things. Understanding that you grow through you and not the personality you that I'm talking about here. It's the you that is constructed within and how you use it for your own personalizations. That stands in the way, literally, of you being willing enough to go beyond what you've already figured out or believe you have. But at the same time, out of the other side of my mouth, I say, read everything you can get your hands on. So that just in case in your inner growing, you run across something that may allow you to notice something already within you that you have experienced and you didn't give it any credibility because you were too busy, like most people in all of our world, being right or wrong or good or bad in your relationship with spirituality. No negation in that. It's just what we do. I read a little bit of Alice Bailey. I have to admit, I haven't read all her stuff. She wrote piles of stuff. Well, Blavatsky wrote some stuff in Theosophy as well. Alcott, a number of people, so many. Read other stuff as well. If you're going to know something about yourself, you're going to find out eventually that you will speak about things that you have read as if it's something you know. You're going to find that out. I hope you're looking in a mirror when you're doing it so you can smile and say, God, I think that comes from so-and-so. I might have read that someplace. That's not my experience. So then you might say, well, look, Ron, if I haven't had very much experience, then it's worth my while to be reading a whole bunch of other stuff, and then I'll know what's true or not. No, you won't. Not for you. Go slow. Begin to understand your relationship with you. That's a biggie. What I'm talking about there is your relationship with you as a person, and see your flaws and see the things you do well. Sometimes we're too flaw focused. Sometimes we're too well focused. Sometimes we just react. And that's our focus. Validate. It's okay. Just try and broaden it out a little bit. And try to be okay with you while you're doing it. And if you begin to notice perceptions that you didn't have around how you express yourself, how you understand yourself, you begin to notice things are touching you a little bit deeper than they could before. And you begin to watch that happening and see that from time to time, it begins to happen inside others as well. That's the process I'm talking about. It's how you live life. And sometimes it's more difficult than we imagine. And sometimes it's just fine. You're mixing your relationship with how you engage, how you intensify, how you soften, how you understand folks, and how difficult it is for anybody else to understand things exactly the way you do and find relevance in that understanding. Because they're looking at life from just a slightly different angle. And they're going to find that they're more right than you are. And you're going to find that you're more right than they are. In fact, if you understand that they're just coming at it from a different angle, and right now, this is the way they think. Later, as they move into that ooze of life, that sense of worth that was past, and begin to see it, they will cultivate new senses of the worth. because everyone is worth. Life is precious, is worthy. The thing I worry about and have worried about over the years is that when people grow, they begin to elevate themselves through their personalities, think they're much more superior to other people because somehow they've reached into some depth, personally viewed and assessed, where they are superior in their particular engagement with their internal process, and they're not. And they don't see that that is nothing but a personalization. I think that's very difficult for all of us. And if you haven't seen it that way, I would hope that you would. Just by understanding that each grows in a slightly different way. You remember the images that we have, if you've been to any of the seminars that we've had, where two people are facing each other and there's energy transmitting. And you'll notice that those chakras that are developed, thanks to Neville from England for doing so, Neville Brand. There's emission, sometimes certain levels, where a person may not be able to handle very much emotion in a balanced manner, may be affected by another person's throat center to help them to be stimulated in a way that they've not been able to be stimulated before. So it might help them to broaden out that thirsty willfulness, that ache to be considered valuable, that will to understand deeper, that ends up focusing on an understanding that is current and the only one that there is. This happens with us. We're human beings. No matter how hard we try to understand, the impact of how we understood yesterday is strong in us. And the defense of it, you could call that etherically, emotionally, mentally thinking, close to our physical engagement with how things should be, is using a sense of feeling necessarily comforted personally as the only way that a person should be. And this is not how life is. But it is how we are. We tend to do this. Not negative, just this is our process of making sense of the world and attempting to define ourselves in a manner that helps us feel as if we're okay as individuals. And we are. And that's why this whole process of internal growing is process oriented. There's a vitality about it, related to change, I mean. And we can only do that little by little. unless there's some tremendous avalanche of horrendous change where we're shocked out of how we thought yesterday to be the only thing that might be true. None of us do well with that kind of thing. In the old traditions, they used to call that initiation. And what they meant by that was not a dream. It's a solid engagement with internal structures that we had never been involved with before. And that is not hurtful. It's life-changing. It was often related and talked to in terms of energy engagement, not you have to be beaten up to grow and nailed to a cross or whipped into shape or beat up by some higher state. That doesn't make any sense. We have a tremendous level of engagement with life that we don't understand. Yet, we settle in. And we settle into certain ways of being that we fall in love with. And as long as that way of being helps us to feel a certain level of comfort, we maintain it. And we maintain it every single day. You can catch yourself maintaining it. And I know when I say this, that some may increase the way that they are to prove that that's the only way they need to be. This is a normal state. It's consistent. And it's not negative. It's just what happens. But it builds walls within the individual to hold them in positions and defense becomes strong. And it can be strong in anybody if you're a human being. So when you're dealing with energy coming through these fields of named forces that occupy our relationship with life and our personalities, make up our personalities, you'll find everywhere that if you try and soften down the edges of how you believe you need to be, emphasis on belief, I guess, to be okay in life, then you'll begin to notice something. You'll begin to notice that you are seeing into your emotional disposition, into your almost unconscious reflexes as you respond to life. Remember, anything that you sense goes all the way up those wonderful axons and nervous system into the brain. And the brain constructs things relative to how you practiced the need to have those things constructed in the way that you do things. You're used to doing things in a certain way, then you will do those many things in the same way. But you can add things that the brain will make sense of. And boy, I find that very fascinating because it means you're flexible, more flexible than you want to be. And sometimes, I'll add that word, because sometimes none of us want to be more flexible because we're protecting images that relate again to our natural responses, our caring, even, our loving, our not so much loving, the way we see the world, the way we don't want to talk about anything that relates to not seeing it that way. And this is very difficult for all of us. So this is why process is important. This is why it's important to know what others think. And for us to attempt to understand beyond what we read, not making it up, it comes from the inside. And those chakras will start stimulating our system in a slightly different way than it was stimulated before. Why? Good question. Because that energy stimulates us in the direction that we would like to have ourselves stimulated in. This includes everything. But eventually, there's an overriding internalization. It's compelling. It's more like all of a sudden you have an option where you had no other options and could see no other options. Your seeing starts to show you options that doesn't necessarily agree with or integrate with how you saw the world before. And we're very fortunate as a species to be able to be a part of that kind of internal, at least possible flexibility. And so you begin to understand what was said before in a slightly different way. That's why it's important. You can see things slightly differently than you can before, that you could before. It's not as logical as we often think it is. But there is a logic to it, maybe more abstract and more revealing. And it makes us curious again, like kids. Curiosity about, not, I can't figure that out, and so therefore it must be the same way as it was before. Well, that's fine. That's one way. Maybe that's part of the process too. But when you're beginning to realize that options can appear out of nowhere, I know when I said that, I realized that there are many who think that comes from the unconscious. You're working on that all the time. It'll come up with an idea, and it's all about you. I just think that there's nothing wrong with both aspects of that. A link up with a different state, a link up beyond the closed-in form of what we believe is the nature of existence, us. There's something beyond that. And there is us. and us. Both are there. And to fuse those things together is not so simple, because there is a great need to have an opening beyond, initially at least, on those early levels, a place where we don't necessarily idealize what we believe, have believed, as truth. Truth is relative to what you think must be true, what I think must be true, what billions of people think might be true. There are certain ways of engaging with that. I find that there is an experiential process involved with this. And even though that may sound a little inventive, if you are really interested in various things, you will find that you will take things from various things. That's not inventive, that's learning. So learn. Not necessarily will what you learn fit everything. And continue to inquire within. After you've inquired within your own personality, and you will have moments when you'll stop doing that, but inquire so that your personality, once it knows stuff, according to others, will be okay with letting that just be in the background. Not necessarily will you call it bad or wrong or this or that. It's there in the background. And you'll begin to see something within yourself that relates to you knowing you on more than just one level. Sometimes you'll like what you see, some other times you won't. It's the nature of us. It's okay. But be careful, please, of the leveling structures that you create in relationship to others and yourself. Please. It is our nature to do those kinds of things. And everything we have on these planes set us up to think like that. And sometimes it's a useful tool. Other times it just is not. Little off the perfect answering of that question, Toshi. But the short answer is a level of engagement with life, the etheric body, so that chakras can be in there according to some people. And that's, with some people, they only believe that's where the chakras are. I don't happen to believe that particular way, but I do believe that there is an energetic system that relates directly to those chakras. And emotion is energy, mind is energy. You can say personality is nothing but energy. Concepts of soul, energetic form, and beyond that, all energetic. And those chakras have a multiplicity of mixing levels together, so that ultimately maybe the highest can engage with, if you call this the lowest level of creation, one could say, just words, then it can engage on these levels. The dilemma is preparing the personality to be able to handle the realization that it is not about only it. It is about something beyond it, which is inclusive of this form, but not in control of this higher state engagement. So that will annoy a lot of people that love the idea of control. And I think we have to understand that more as a fusion or a synthesis between levels, as opposed to this level being in charge of other levels. I hope we can do that. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. There's another question here. It's getting a little late. This is a question from Barbara Newport. The Lord, she says, this is from Deuteronomy 30, Old Testament, chapter 30, verse 6. Excuse me. The Lord our God will circumcise our hearts and the hearts of our descendants, so that you may love him with all your heart and with all your soul and live. Oh boy. This is an interesting way to see things, Old Testament stuff, talking about an engagement with the highest level and or universal levels of love. Concept of circumcision is to help us to let go of something. And this concept of letting go, or a concept of, in traditional ways in the old concept of circumcising, had very much to do with a member of the physical body, male physical body. So the penis, or female in some traditions, it's true, and which is pretty terrible stuff from some people's point of view, especially with females. It's just pretty hard. But here's the issue. The issue was not about this kind of circumcising. The issue was more of getting the personality out of the way so that the love of that higher state could come in and open that heart so that an individual could perceive that tremendous level of peace and love flowing in her or him. And unfortunately, this is a very difficult thing to have happen, because you would become in love with that love rather than in love with your own personal ways of engaging with life. And this is, of course, the way we think right now, since the Renaissance and both Italian and French, and we think, oh boy, the individual is the greatest thing. And it is. It's always been precious. But we always related these concepts to God, for example, relating to, and we still do to some degree, to belief, a belief in this way of thinking about God, 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 another way of thinking about God. And the issue was in that tradition, at least in the Jewish tradition, that God would circumcise the heart, would release you from the love of you so that you could be aware of and experience the love of that higher aspect that related to loving, period, universally, of all things. Not just what you think deserves loving. That's a carryover from how we see the world from this level, from a high level downward. And we still adventure into those territories all the time. Check yourself out. Walking down the street, engaging with people at a party, engaging with anything. You will come up with ideas that relate directly to you. This is not what the circumcising of the heart meant. But our standard interaction with survival on these planes is self-protection. Because you love you as you are. Don't think of it that way, or maybe you do. But you love you as you are. And this says, we'll help you to circumcise that, to release that, to let go of that, so that you can feel that tremendous level of love and still be able to live the life that you believe or that you think you need to live, or to live the life that you are meant to live. This is a really big oyster. How are you meant to live? Well, if you take a close look at some people's point of view, you are meant to live in a link with that higher state. And we use that love for whatever thing we think we need to ever, well, the ways we think we need to express ourselves and to live. We use it like a tool. And in my view, we get to do that pretty consistently. And because we basically don't know any better. And we don't know how to do it any other way. So once again, this is process. We're learning. But we don't understand what that would mean to have that love flowing in us all the time. Wouldn't that mean that we wouldn't be able to do anything? We'd be so in love with that love, nothing else would mean anything? These are important questions to ask yourself. Or is our personality, love of our personality, and what we do and how we see the world, so strong that that can't happen in us? Otherwise, we would be too fearful that we would lose something in that transaction. We would lose being what we've already been in love with. The way we act, the way we think, the way we engage, and constructive along with the not so constructive aspects or characteristics. It's a deep and very thoughtful passage if you consider it. But don't consider it overly long. Remember, this is process. And maybe someone in that timeline was thinking about some of the things that we're thinking about and trying to understand and make some sense of their particular journey. Not so much this one particular line of expression, but in their journey. How would that be? Would it be okay to have that sense of loving in you 24/7. How difficult would it be not to see how you function and automatically engage with your responses in some not so positive way, pulling you away from that love more universal, compassion more universal, then you could have something different. I don't know. You think about that. I'll come up with my idea. It's important you come up with yours. Maybe that energetic engagement that you already have within you has some flexibility, not only with what you speak, I mean, really inside of you. I wish you well with that. I wish me well with that. I wish everyone well with that. And I think that's about our time. And we're going to meditate for about an hour, 50 minutes to an hour. And I wish you all well. And we'll, as the music stops, we'll say hello again. Now we'll just begin to do the bouncing and grounding to end the meditation. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.